You're listening to Workforce Innovation News, powered by LWIA 23. Get ready to hear about all things workforce development and workforce innovation. And now, on to the episode.
Hello and welcome to WIN Workforce Innovation News. I am Jamie Corda-Hijawi, the Director for Local Workforce Innovation Area 23, or LWIA 23 as we call it. Today, I have Lee Reese of St. Clair County Intergovernmental Grants Department. He is the Regional Apprenticeship Navigator there, and he is here to spread all kinds of knowledge about apprenticeships. Thank you for being here, Lee. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Jamie.
So every time I talk to you, Lee, I learn so much. And I've talked to you quite a bit, and I still have so much more to learn too. There's a lot going on with apprenticeships, and I thought this would be a great opportunity for you to share some big ideas of what's going on now, what apprenticeships are, and kind of where they're at in local industries right now, so that more people understand what we're dealing with. Because honestly, sometimes I still go back to my original impression of apprenticeships as just some young guy, usually working with an older guy, laying some bricks or hanging some wires in housing. But that's not what apprenticeships are anymore. So can you start us off by maybe telling us a little bit about what you do and what apprenticeships are?
Sure. So my primary function is to go out and engage businesses and education entities, as well as job seekers, community-based organizations, any piece of the workforce that touches workforce. And so there are basically two pieces of the workforce. There's an existing workforce, and then there's a future workforce. So I work with both to try to build talent pipeline systems for local employers. Right now, with the situation where it is, workforce is hard to come by. If an individual wants to be working, they have a set of skills, they would be working. So the employers are really challenged during these times to try to find workforce. So I try to help them with existing workforce, look for individuals that can transition out of groups of people that have been overlooked, individuals with differing abilities, returning offenders, transitioning military personnel, places that traditionally employers have not known about or not thought about looking for their workforce. And then with future workforce, I look at talking to a business, finding out what their skill levels are, or how many people they're going to need when they're going to need them. And then I try to connect them up with a local community college or high school or both to build a talent pipeline moving forward so that individuals can be introduced to good paying job opportunities with sustainable wages. What an apprenticeship is, it's a work-based learning opportunity in which the business customizes its own product. So they decide what training they need as a part of the apprenticeship and what on-the-job training they need. Why apprenticeships work so well with the models that have been used up to apprenticeship gaining ground again. The individual goes and acquires a piece of education or a skill at a community college or high school or from being in the workforce. Then they enter employment with an employer, and that employer has to bring them on board. They have to teach them the culture of the community of the business. They also have to get them up to speed on what of the education and skills they've gained they actually need for the job that the employer has. And that's an onboarding process. It takes time and it takes money. With an apprenticeship, the individual goes to get the related training instruction, which is theory, and then they come to work and they put it into practical use. So you're getting the theory and applying it at the same time. The skills match is so much faster when you do it that way. Employers really get to test drive an individual before they pay for them, so to speak.
That is pretty cool. So it is the original work and earn model. They're working and earning and learning all at the same time. So it doesn't sound like there's a whole lot of why wouldn't they do this? But one thing that catches my attention is you're saying that they can go to a community college or a high school to get the learning portion of it. So that reminds me, I hear a lot about a pre-apprenticeship and youth apprenticeships. Are those two things different? And how do you do an apprenticeship in a high school situation?
So language is tomato, tomato. Our employers in our area like the words paid internship. A paid internship, a pre-apprenticeship, those are all basically prepping an individual to succeed in a registered apprenticeship. And so it's not so much the structure involved as the quality and the end result. So in my area, a lot of companies are taking that paid internship where they take a high school student their senior year and they come and they go to work on a paid experience. The liability insurance for the high school travels with them while they're doing a work-based learning that's a part of their high school program. So the employer doesn't bear the brunt of that. The individual gains the skills, they test drive and see if that's the career pathway that interests them. At the same time, the employer looks at the individual and says, do they have the right work ethic? Do they have the drive necessary? Do they appear to be fitting in good with the individuals around them? And then if they do, they offer them the paid registered apprenticeship after they exit high school. And that model has caught on it's a very favorable model in our area. It's expanding rapidly.
I really like the sounds of that because I understand firsthand and just in my daily job how exponentially important it is to get that career exploration in when you're younger. That a lot of the workforce, the new workforce that we're hearing about, that students leaving school, they get into the workforce and they don't have all the employability skills that they would like to have. And it's really because they don't even know what they want to do yet. So to have that opportunity for them to kind of get their feet wet, see if it's something that works for them, have the employer be able to check out if that particular individual is going to fit well, that really, that brings this nice little balance to everything, and it mitigates a lot of the risk that goes into hiring someone new or starting a new job. So that's really cool. I like that. One of the other things is I think a lot of us have this very stereotypical view of apprenticeships. It's building and trade constructions. Maybe it's auto mechanic, but it's very an archaic view almost. I'm hearing a lot about some non-traditional careers that are developing apprenticeships. Do you have any experience with something outside of the building and trades that's kind of showing that stereotypes are being broken down in apprenticeships?
Oh, yes. We have 8 apprenticeship programs running currently. We're about to expand 4 more before the end of the year. One of the ones I'm working on now is with an individual. He's retired military and he wants to give back to the community. So he's wanting to work with individuals with barriers. Well, he just happens to be developing a food truck court in our area. And so I'm working with him to develop the first food truck apprenticeship certified in the US. And what's neat about what he's doing is an individual will come in, he has bought a building also that he calls a commissary. The individuals will come in with differing abilities, or there'll be military, there'll be justice involved. They'll get a chance to work in the commissary and establish a baseline set of skills. Once they've done that, they'll be offered an opportunity for a 3-year registered apprenticeship on the food truck. They'll go out and they'll start as third hand, they'll work to second hand, then they'll eventually be captain of the food truck. At the point in the 3rd year where they're the captain of the food truck, they'll already have an established route and they'll be offered the title to the vehicle. And it'll be their food truck, it'll be their route, they'll become an entrepreneur at that point. So that's just one really cool one we're working on. We're working on lots of other outside the box kind of things, teacher aides. We're looking at one with developmental disability and Down syndrome where they work at a senior living home as more or less the front desk people. So they'll do little small things, clerical, assist individuals getting around the facility and with information. So there's a lot of stuff out there. We're doing aircraft mechanic, CNA, certified medical assistant, certified nursing assistant. We're working on one for pharmacy technician, popcorn tier. I'm working on one for that, teaching individual how to do flavored popcorns with a local company. So there's a lot of outside the box kind of things being done.
There are. That surprised me. That was exciting. It got me kind of thrilled about this all over again. I love thinking outside of the box and trying new innovative things. When you were talking about the food truck, you very clearly laid out there's this system. They're going to go through and they're going to get third hand, second hand, and then eventually getting their own truck. So is that something that's incorporated in most apprenticeships where there's this very clear pathway?
Yes, in most cases, you have two types of career pathways. You can have the career pathway inside the apprenticeship, where individuals are exposed to multiple phases of differing businesses. When most people think of a warehouse, they think of Scooby-Doo and the boxwood and the spider webs. That's not modern manufacturing. Modern manufacturing are clean facilities where there's some automation, there's some human involved, but there are cross-sector jobs within those manufacturing elements. There may be an accountant, there may be a security person, a forklift driver, a truck driver. And so there's all these various pieces of manufacturing that if you ask somebody, they'd say, oh, an accountant's an accountant. Yeah, they're an accountant, but they're working for a manufacturer. So there are lots of opportunities within where we need to get to is developing those interests and making sure that people know all those opportunities are available to them.
Yeah, so I get really super excited every time I talk to you. I learn more and I get more thrilled about apprenticeships because I feel like that they are not getting the representation that they should. Back in the day, before my day, probably, I think they were a lot more popular. And now it seems, at least in recent times, that they've kind of fallen off. And very recently, there's been a rejuvenation. Do you know or have any insight on what is the cause of maybe why they kind of fell off a bit, or why we're bringing them back? What's your take on all that?
Well, we had a period of time, late 80s, 90s, where everything was, you need a 4-year degree to find a sustainable living and to succeed in life. Well, that's not true. There's a very popular cartoon that goes around where the individuals, two guys are up on a pole, and one guy says to the other, says, hey, I'm turning the power off to the guy that said I needed a 4-year degree. And so it's, there are lots of things out here, computer numeric coding. There's lots of jobs out here that with just 16 weeks of training, you can enter a $45,000 to $50,000 a year job with benefits. So it's breaking the model of the 4-year degree is the only way you can succeed, is where apprenticeships have started to take off now. People realize that, yes, there's a career pathway available to me, and I can go and I can incur, and this is a very important point about apprenticeships, I can get that training and education without incurring debt.
That is super important. From a personal standpoint, I can appreciate how important that is. So while that is major, what other types of benefits are there to individuals becoming apprentices?
The benefits are that you realize that the company's investing their time and effort in your personal development. And so when a company's willing to invest that training and time and effort to make sure that you're able to do their job, you see the business a little bit differently than coming and signing on and having the difficulty of trying to understand the culture to build your place within that organization. So that's one huge benefit. And then also, all registered apprenticeships, you receive a national credential, you receive a journeyman's card in whatever that registered apprenticeship is. So if you're a spouse of a military individual and you have finished a registered apprenticeship, you don't face hurdles going to another place. You're able to start a CNA or a CMA or a nursing program or a food truck, and you do not have to jump through any more hoops for that state to get your accreditation or your licensing. You have it as a part of that registered apprenticeship.
That's very relieving to know that if you go anywhere, you have something to fall back on very easily. You don't have to start all over from scratch. And yes, I think when you work for someone who's really investing in you and you're learning while you're there and you're going through that growth, I personally would probably be more loyal to that employer if they're sticking with me through all that time learning, whether that's a 16-week course or maybe it's 3 years. I could see me finishing up and wanting to stay with them. So I feel like loyalty would be a really big benefit to the employer. What other kind of benefits do employers see when they hire apprentices?
So there's also a monetary return on investment. So the U.S. Department of Labor has been studying registered apprenticeships for well over 20 years, and their stated average on their website is $1.51 return for every dollar spent on an apprenticeship. And right now, the state of Illinois also is offering some carrots to the employer, so to speak. One being that the individuals that draw the apprenticeship expansion grant money are able to assist businesses with the related training instruction costs. There's also a tax credit that if a business were to not use the registered apprenticeship money that's offered by Department of Labor and they were to pay for the education piece for an apprenticeship themselves, they could receive up to a $5,000 tax credit. Based on the individual's eligibility or where the business lies. So there's quite a few benefits in addition to just being able to customize and get your own end product.
Okay. So with all these benefits and with apprenticeships being applicable to just about any industry, what does an employer need to do to develop an apprenticeship if they're interested? I mean, anything when you're working with the government, it seems like it's a really difficult process. So is apprenticeships the same? Is there a lot of red tape to go through?
No, actually, what Illinois has done, they have created my position, the Regional Apprenticeship Navigator, currently available in 7 of the 10 economic development regions as a state. There's actually a notice of funding out now to be ended by September 15th. The state anticipates filling the 3 areas that don't have a navigator with a navigator. And so the navigator's job is to navigate the employer through an apprenticeship. As soon as they decide that this might be their model, they need to reach out to the navigators, and the navigators are located on the Apprenticeship Illinois site. Just type in Apprenticeship Illinois and a site will pop up and it'll say, want to talk to someone? You click on the button and there's every navigator and what county they represent. Reach out to the navigators. They're very responsive. They'll reach back out to the business and they'll start the conversation. Where do you need? What do you need? How do you need? And once we develop that conversation, then we will help that in business start the paperwork process and hand them off to what's called an intermediary. An intermediary pretty much does all the work for the Department of Labor. It's very few forms. It's very little work on the employer. And it, for the longest time, was the reason most individuals did not want to deal with registered apprenticeships. But they're a lot easier than people think they are.
So that's really good news. It's easy on the employer, and especially if there's a navigator in the region that can hold their hand, guide them through the whole process. I kind of feel called out a little bit because I'm supposed to be working on a grant for navigator for our region. And yeah, we're getting down, just a couple more weeks left on that. But I've noticed without a navigator and just kind of relying on you just in the last year or so, but prior to that, we in our region have not had a whole lot of interest in apprenticeships. So since, and it sounds like you're doing a whole lot of work on apprenticeships, developing new ones in your region now. So prior to you being there, was your region kind of facing the same thing where there wasn't a whole lot of interest? And then once a navigator was in place, that really made it a complete turnaround?
Yes, that's how it happened. When I took my position over, one of the first thing I did is start attending all community outreach events. I started getting very cozy with our chambers of commerce because they have the really close contacts with the businesses. So once I developed a trust relationship with the chambers of commerce, they were able to tell the businesses, hey, no matter what you need, if it's not a registered apprenticeship, it could be, anything, any type of work-based learning. Maybe you want some kids to come in for a temporary period of time. Talk to the navigator. He will find you the resources. And that's what we do. It's not just registered apprenticeship. It's any type of work-based learning. Maybe the business doesn't have the ability to hire a tech person. Maybe we reach out to a community college and see if there's an intern that wants to take on a short-term project for a grade that could help the business at no cost. There are all sorts of ways to skin the cat.
That's pretty awesome. So you really are just out there helping everyone, the people looking for jobs, the people looking to hire, and then even students who aren't quite sure exactly what they need to do yet. You're out there just servicing the entire region. That's
yes.
cool.
And one of the things we're also doing is we're working with some of our partnerships here, like Southern Illinois Builders Association and some of the construction companies. We're working with the engineering at SIUE to develop what we call mobile skills labs. These will be trailers that have like for construction, they might have quite a few things that are hands-on for the students to do. And we hope to have these rolled out in the next couple of years to where they can go to the 7th and 8th grade schools within our region, which we've identified 72 that have a 7th or 8th grade component in our 9-county region. They'll go the 7th and 8th grade year. They'll allow the students to participate. They'll get information on career awareness, and hopefully that'll lead to some type of assessment for career. And then we'll start to build their education towards visiting us in the future to join that particular line of work.
That's super cool. Again, there's that career exploration and hitting them even sooner, not at the high school level, but the middle school level, when they're really impressionable and they're really, they don't have any idea of what options are out there. Your region is probably a little different than mine. We're very rural. So transportation and accessibility is a big deal. I don't think we have anything with a mobile lab of sorts right now. So I would love to learn more about that in future topics. Maybe that's something that we can implement in the future, and we could get more people, more students involved and aware of what all the opportunities are out here.
Absolutely.
So already, just in the last few minutes, I've learned a whole lot more about apprenticeships. And I've already thought of a few things that I want to dive deeper into. So in the future, I may invite you back. We would love to have you on our podcast again to talk in more detail about some of the stuff you have going on over there in St. Clair County and the surrounding area. Lee, is there anything else that's burning in your mind about apprenticeships that you want the world to know, or at least our portion of the world?
Yeah. Apprenticeships are so cool. Darth Vader did one.
He did, really. He was
That's
an apprentice.
Right. He was. So you keep that same earn while you learn. What did he earn? He earned the power to do evil. That was his payoff. He was mentored, and he did on-the-job learning.
You're absolutely right. Now let's just hope everyone uses their powers for good instead of evil. And I would definitely do an apprenticeship if I got the really cool lightsaber too. Like, so if we could somehow work that in, you get your journeyman card and a lightsaber, sign me up. I'm down.
I think would be good.
Well, thank you so much for talking with me today, Lee. I appreciate it. And it's always a joy to talk to you. I look forward to our next little chat.
Thank you for having me.
You've been listening to Workforce Innovation News powered by LWIA 23. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. To learn more about LWIA 23, visit lwa23.net.